I'm not your property, and I haven't been for a long time. That was the text. 7 words that my wife of 6 years sent me from an unknown location on a Tuesday night, while I sat at a restaurant table with 2 plates of food going cold and a ring on my finger that I had never once considered taking off. My name is Barry Elliot. I am 38 years old. I'm a civil engineer. I have spent my entire career calculating how much weight a structure can hold before it collapses, studying the invisible stress lines, the slow fractures, the warning signs that most people walk right past because the bridge is still standing, and that feels like enough. I'm good at my job. I'm very good at reading the signs. And if I'm being completely honest with you, I had been reading the signs in my marriage for nearly a year before Erica sent that text. I just kept hoping that what I was seeing was something I could fix. That's the thing about being a man who builds things. You believe, almost religiously, that everything broken can be repaired if you understand it well enough. I was wrong about that. The restaurant was called Harlow's. Candlelight, white tablecloths, the kind of quiet elegance that required a reservation 3 weeks in advance. I had booked the table because I had something to tell Erica, something I had been carrying privately for 18 months, something that was finally ready to be shared. The table was set for 2. I had ordered for both of us because I knew her preferences better than she knew them herself. The sea base, no capers, extra lemon. A glass of the Sancerre she pretended not to love because she thought it was pretentious to have a favorite wine. I checked the door every few minutes. I rearranged the silverware twice. The waiter came and went with the quiet professionalism of someone who has witnessed loneliness dressed up as celebration before. And then my phone buzzed. I read the text once, then again, then a third time, not because I didn't understand the words, but because I was locating them inside everything I already knew. Everything I had been carefully, quietly documenting for 11 weeks in a small, black notebook that I kept in the inside pocket of my wake bag. A notebook that had a name circled 3 times on page 4. A notebook that told a story I had been too steady, or maybe too proud, to speak aloud. I set my phone face down on the tablecloth. I called the waiter over and asked for a box. I packed Erica's sea base, untouched, still warm, wrapped it carefully, and drove home through streets that looked exactly the same as they always had, though nothing was. When I got home, I put the container in the refrigerator. I found a marker. I wrote her name on the lid, and the date underneath it. Then I sat down, opened my notebook, and wrote 1 sentence. She told me who she became. Now I need to decide who I am. The notebook had started as something small. That is important to understand. It was not the act of a suspicious man. It was not a trap. It was the habit of someone trained to observe, to notice the hairline crack in the concrete before it becomes the reason a bridge falls. I had bought it at a gas station on a Wednesday morning in October, 11 weeks before Erica disappeared, because I had driven to work that day with a feeling I could not name and I needed somewhere to put it. The first entry was just a date and 4 words. She turned the screen. We had been sitting at the kitchen island eating breakfast, something we had done together for 6 years, something that had always felt like ours, and her phone had lit up on the counter beside her coffee cup. She picked it up, read whatever was on the screen, and without looking at me, without changing her expression, she turned the phone face down. Not the way you silence a notification. The way you protect information. I did not say anything. I ate my eggs. I drove to work. I bought the notebook. Over the next 11 weeks, I filled 14 pages. Not with accusations, with observations. The new laugh she had developed, shorter, sharper, performed, that only appeared when she was on her phone in the other room. The way she started calling me Barry instead of Babe. So gradually I almost didn't notice the shift until the word babe had been absent for 3 weeks, and its absence sat in the apartment like a piece of furniture someone had removed in the night. The new clothes she was buying, blazers and silk blouses and heeled boots she never wore around me, that would appear in the closet and then disappear, presumably worn somewhere I was not. The Friday evenings that used to be ours that had slowly been reclassified as her time, with explanations that were always just detailed enough to sound like the truth. And then, on page 4, the name. Marcus. She had mentioned him first in passing. A new colleague, smart, well-traveled, the kind of person who makes the whole office sharper just by being in it. That was how she said it. I remember because I wrote it down verbatim. Over the following weeks, he appeared in more sentences, always contextually, always innocently. Marcus thinks the campaign should go a different direction. Marcus recommended this restaurant. Marcus is a friend who does exactly what you do. Barry, you two would actually get along. The name accumulated the way pressure accumulates. Invisibly, consistently, until I counted it one evening and found it on 11 separate pages. I circled it 3 times. Not in anger. In the same spirit, I would circle a stress fracture on a blueprint, acknowledging it, measuring it, deciding what it meant for the structure as a whole. Now I sat at the kitchen counter with a notebook open and Erica's name on a container in my refrigerator and a text on my phone that had rearranged everything. I read back through the entries slowly, not looking for validation. I was past needing that, but looking for the moment. The exact moment the fracture had started. I found it on page 2. A sentence so small I had almost not written it down. She didn't ask about the Georgia meeting today. She used to always ask. I closed the notebook. I reached for my phone and called Diane. She picked up on the first ring, not the second. The feist, as though she had been sitting with her phone in her hand, waiting for a call she had known for months was eventually coming. Behind the notebook, half tucked under the corner, was a folded piece of paper I had not opened yet. I had written one word on the outside of the fold in my own handwriting. Later, I left it there. Some things needed to wait until I was ready to feel them. Diane Elliot has never once in her life said something she did not mean. That is the first thing you need to understand about my sister. She is 43 years old, a paralegal with 20 years of experience reading documents that people sign without understanding, and she has a particular gift for seeing the architecture of a situation. Who built it, who benefits from it, and who is going to be left holding the damage when it comes apart. She met Erica twice. Both times she smiled warmly, hugged her, complimented her dress. Both times, on the drive home, she said nothing about Erica at all. Not one word. I used to take that as acceptance. I understand now it was restraint. When she picked up the phone, I had not even said hello before she asked it. How long have you known? Not I'm so sorry. Not what happened. Not are you okay. She went straight to the center of it, the way she always does, because Diane does not believe in circling pain. She believes in locating it. I sat at the kitchen counter with a notebook in front of me and the folded paper beneath it, and I said, long enough to be ready. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear her breathing, measured and steady, the way it gets when she is thinking rather than reacting. Then she asked the question that cut through everything else, through the anger I was not performing and the grief I had not yet allowed and the strange, hollow calm that had settled over me since I read the text. What do you want to protect? I had not expected that question. I had expected logistics, or comfort, or the kind of careful outrage that sisters offer when their brothers are hurt. But Diane asked what I wanted to protect, and in doing so she handed me back my agency at the exact moment I needed it most. I did not have to think about the answer for long. Everything I built before she knew I built it. I said. She exhaled, not with surprise, but with the sound of someone who has been waiting to hear a specific sentence confirmed. Then don't move fast, she said. Move right. We talked for 40 minutes. I told her about the notebook. I told her about Marcus. She wrote the name down. I heard the pen. I told her about the Georgia contract, about the dinner reservation, about the sea base in my refrigerator with Erica's name on the lid. When I told her that last part, there was a silence on the line that felt different from the others, softer, more careful, and I knew that was the moment Diane understood the full weight of what her brother had been carrying. She did not say, I told you so. She has never said that to me in her life. What she said instead was, have you talked to David yet? I paused. David Osei was my college roommate, now a business attorney in Atlanta, a man I had called exactly once in the past 3 years, for his birthday. He and Diane had never met. There was no logical path by which she should have known his name in this context. How do you know about David? I asked. Another pause. Then, carefully, because 3 months ago you mentioned the Georgia contract in passing at Mom's birthday dinner, and I went home and looked up what a municipal infrastructure contract of that size typically requires in terms of legal structuring. And I thought, if Barry is smart, which he already has someone in mind. David was a roommate for 4 years and he specialized in business law. It wasn't a difficult calculation. I sat with that for a moment. My sister had been thinking 3 months ahead of a crisis I was still living inside. She had done it quietly, without alarming me, without inserting herself, without ever once saying I see something wrong in your marriage. She had simply prepared, the way our mother had always prepared, quietly, practically, without performance. I thought about our mother sliding her wedding ring off her finger to sell it, her face dry and resolved, her hands steady. I thought about how I had watched that at 12 years old and made a promise to myself that I did not fully understand at the time, but understood perfectly now. I would not be caught without a plan. I'll call David in the morning, I told Diane. Call him tonight, she said. And Barry, don't tell Erica anything about the contract. Not yet. Not until it's protected. I said I wouldn't. We said goodnight. I hung up the phone and sat in the kitchen that still smelled faintly like the dinner I had cooked 2 nights ago. A dinner Erica had eaten quickly, distracted, her phone beside her plate, and I thought about what it means to build something strong enough to survive the thing that's trying to break it. Then I picked up my phone and called David. He answered on the second ring. When I told him what I needed, he didn't ask questions. He said, I can have the LLC structure ready by Friday. What do you want to call it? I looked at my notebook, at the 14 pages of careful observation, at the name circled 3 times. Elliot Structural Group, I said. By Friday, David had the paperwork ready. Elliot Structural Group, LLC, registered in Georgia, assets protected, my name alone on every line. I signed the documents at 11 p.m. in my kitchen while Erica's contact photo stared up at me from my phone screen, undialed. She had sent one follow-up text that day. Barry, please. 2 words that told me she had expected the silence to last 2 days, not 2 weeks. I did not reply. This was not cruelty. This was clarity. I had spent 3 years responding to every emotional weather front she produced, adjusting myself, softening myself, making myself smaller so she could feel larger. I was done performing availability for someone who had stopped being present long before she physically left. The 2 weeks moved differently than I expected. I had braced for devastation, for the 3 a.m. spiral, for the reaching toward her side of the bed, for the grief that hollows you from the inside. Some of that came. I will not lie and say it didn't. There were 2 nights in the first week where I sat in the kitchen with the lights off and felt the full weight of 6 years ending. But I did not call her. I did not post anything. I did not tell our mutual friends. I kept my face neutral at work, confirmed the Georgia contract timeline, hired a second engineer for the project team, and bought a second monitor for my desk at home. On day 13, while I was reviewing bridge load calculations at that desk, my phone buzzed. It was not Erica. It was Marcus. Hey man, I think we should talk. I stayed at the message for a long time. Then I typed back slowly, deliberately, with the patience of someone who has already decided the outcome. I'm listening. When? We met at a coffee shop on a Thursday morning, neutral ground, public, the kind of place where raised voices would embarrass the person doing the raising. Marcus arrived 4 minutes late, which told me something. A man with a clean conscience arrives early. He was well-dressed, broad-shouldered, the kind of person who filled a room without trying, or perhaps while trying very hard and having practiced it long enough that it looked effortless. I understood immediately what Erica had felt in his presence. He made you feel like you were being assessed by someone whose assessment mattered. He sat down across from me and spent the first 3 minutes explaining that nothing physical had happened between him and Erica. He said it twice. I noticed he said it twice. I let him talk. I watched the way his hands moved, frequent, expressive, the gestures of a man working to convince. He told me Erica was going through something, that she was searching for herself, that he had never intended for any of this to happen, that he cared about her but not like that, that he thought she was making a mistake by leaving. I listened to all of it without interrupting once. Then I asked him one question. Did she ever tell you what I do for work? He blinked. You're an engineer, right? I smiled. Not warmly. The way you smile when someone has just confirmed exactly what you needed to know. That Erica had never once, in all those lunches and gallery shows and rooftop dinners, described her husband as anything more than a job title. Sure, I said. I stood up, shook his hand, and left. Outside, I made one phone call. When the other line picked up, I said, "She doesn't know about the contract yet." The answer was no. "Good," I said. "Keep it that way." Day 15 arrived gray and quiet. I was at my desk reviewing soil compression data for the Georgia site when the phone buzzed. I looked at the screen with the same measured calm I had maintained for 2 weeks, and then I saw the message, and something tightened briefly in my chest before I exhaled it out. "Erica, you haven't called once. You haven't even tried. Don't you care? Aren't you going to fight for us?" I read it 3 times. I thought about the reservation at Harlow's, the sea base, still in my refrigerator, the notebook, the 14 pages, the name circled 3 times. I thought about my mother's hands, steady and dry, sliding the ring off her finger without crying. Not because she didn't love my father, but because she had already finished grieving him while he was still in the room. I picked up my phone. I typed carefully. "I fought for us for 3 years. You were busy figuring out you weren't my property. Take your time." I hit send. I put the phone face down. I went back to the soil compression data. 3 minutes later, the phone rang. Erica's name lit up the screen. Her contact photo, a picture from our 3rd anniversary, her laughing at something I had said, her head tilted back, completely unguarded. I had never changed it. I looked at it for the full duration of the ring. I did not answer. The screen went dark. The apartment went quiet. And I sat there in the silence I had built for myself, deliberately, carefully, brick by brick, and I felt something I had not expected to feel. Not triumph, not satisfaction, peace. She came back on day 16 at 6:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I was on a video call with the Georgia project team when I heard her key in the lock, and I glanced at the clock in the corner of my screen before I calmly told the team I would follow up by email and ended the call. She stepped into the apartment and stopped. I had rearranged the living room. Not dramatically. I had not banged anything down or boxed up her photographs. But my desk, which had always been pushed apologetically into the corner like an afterthought, now stood in the center of the room, purposeful and unapologetic. 2 monitors, the Georgia contract document spread in organized sections, a professional printer humming quietly. The apartment looked like a place where someone was building something serious. I was in a dress shirt at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. I had not dressed for her. I had dressed for the video call. But she didn't know that. She looked around the room slowly, at the desk, the monitors, the documents, with the expression of someone who has walked into a house and found the floor plan changed. "What happened in here?" she said. "I got busy," I said. She set her bag down. Her eyes moved to the papers on the desk, and I watched her try to read them from across the room without appearing to. "What is all this?" "My work. Your foam job. My business." She looked at me then, really looked, the way she had not looked at me in a long time, and I held her gaze without filling the silence. Her eyes dropped back to the desk, to the letterhead on the top document. Elliot Structural Group. Something moved across her face. A recognition she couldn't quite place. She had heard that name. Recently. She just couldn't locate where. I let her sit with that. She smelled the food almost immediately. That was always one of the things I loved about Erica. She was present in her senses in a way I found beautiful. She could walk into a room and tell you what had been cooked there 2 hours earlier. Now she turned toward the kitchen, following the smell, and I watched her cross the threshold and stop again. The table was set for one. A single plate. A single glass of water. My dinner, plated and waiting. She stood in the kitchen doorway with her bag still on her shoulder and looked at the table with an expression I had not seen on her face before. Not quite hate, not quite anger, but something that lived uncomfortably between them. "You're not going to ask me to sit down." "I didn't know you were coming," I said. I sat down and picked up my fork. "I live here." "You do," I said. I began eating. She stood there another moment, then set her bag on the counter and sat down across from me at the empty setting. The placeless seat, no plate, no glass, and the symbolism of that was not lost on either of us. The silence between us was enormous and specific. Not the comfortable silence of two people who have run out of words to fill space. The weighted silence of two people who have very specific things to say and are each waiting to see who needs to say them first. Finally, are you punishing me? I set my fork down. I looked at her across the table, at her face, which I had memoized the way you memorize something you built, and I said, with complete evenness, "No, I'm just not performing anymore." Her phone buzzed in her bag. Mine rang on the counter. I glanced at it, silenced it, but not before she saw the name on the screen. Claire. I did not explain it. I picked my fork back up. She did not ask about Claire that night. She went to bed before me, or went to the bedroom, at least, and I stayed at my desk until past midnight reviewing project files, genuinely, because the work was real and the deadlines were real, and I had spent enough of my life putting my work aside because someone in the next room needed the ambient comfort of my proximity. At 2 a.m., I heard her get up. I heard the soft sound of the laptop opening on the kitchen counter. I had left it there. I had left it open. I will not pretend that was accidental. I heard nothing for a long time, just the faint sound of her reading, the occasional scroll. I sat in the bedroom in the dark, and I thought about my mother, about what it costs to keep your face steady while your world reorganizes itself. I thought about the folded paper still tucked beneath my notebook, still unopened, the word later written on the outside in my own handwriting. I had written it the night she left. I knew what was inside it. I was not ready yet. In the kitchen, Erica was reading the email thread between me and Claire Okafor, attorney at law. 14 emails. Business structuring, asset protection, LLC registration. All of it dated within the first week after she left. She was reading the story of what I had done with my silence while she was busy finding herself. I heard the laptop close. Then nothing. Then, very quietly, in the dark of our kitchen at 2 a.m., I heard Erica cry. Not dramatically. The small, private kind. The kind that comes when there is no audience and no performance possible. The kind that means something has finally, irrevocably landed. I did not go to her. There was one email she had not opened. Subject line, the Georgia Bridge contract, client confidentiality clause. Her finger had hovered over it. I know because I heard the hesitation in the silence. She chose not to open it. That restraint told me more about her than anything she had said in months. She found the press mention at 7:43 a.m. I know because I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard the change in her breathing from across the apartment. That specific, involuntary intake of air that means someone has just read something that rearranged their understanding. She was sitting on the edge of the bed with her phone, still in yesterday's clothes, and she had searched Elliot Structural Group the way I knew she eventually would. She was in marketing. She knew how to read between professional lines, how to translate a carefully worded trade newsletter mention into approximate dollar figures, into scale, into what a municipal contract of that nature actually meant for the man who had secured it. She called her mother. I heard her voice from the hallway, low, careful, but not low enough. "Mom, I think I made a mistake." A pause while her mother responded. Then Erica said nothing for a long time, just listened. When she finally walked into the kitchen, I was standing at the counter with 2 cups of coffee. I held one out to her. She took it. Her hand was steady, but her eyes were not. "Good morning," I said. "Good morning," she said. We stood in our kitchen, the kitchen where we had eaten breakfast together for 6 years, where she had turned a phone screen down one Wednesday morning and started a 14-page notebook, and drank our coffee in a silence that had changed texture entirely. I did not ask what she had found. I did not need to. I could read the structure of a person as fluently as I could read a blueprint. I knew exactly where the weight was sitting. On the counter, half tucked beneath the notebook, was the folded paper with later written on the outside. I picked it up, put it in my shirt pocket. It was almost time. We sat across from each other at the desk. My desk, the one now in the center of the room. In the late afternoon, when the light through the windows had gone golden and unhurried, indifferent to the fact that a marriage was being weighed and measured in its warmth. Erica talked for a long time. She talked about the suffocation she had felt, not from anything I had done specifically, but from the shape of the life we had built, which had slowly come to feel like a room with no windows. She talked about Marcus, said clearly, and I believed her, that nothing physical had happened, but admitted that he had made her feel visible in a way she hadn't felt in years. She talked about her father, about growing up monitored and contained, about how love and control had become the same word in her childhood, and she had spent her adult life flinching from anything that resembled either. I listened to all of it. I did not interrupt once. When she finished, she looked at me across the desk with her coffee cup between both hands and said, "I still love you, Barry." I nodded. I know. Then, that's not enough anymore. The sentence landed between us like a structural beam, load-bearing, immovable. What does that mean? It means love was never the problem, I said. Respect was. I opened the desk drawer. I took out the folder David had prepared. I slid it across the desk toward her and watched her open it. Watched the exact moment she saw the divorce papers, and beneath them, the asset separation document with Elliot Structural Group, LLC printed at the top, incorporation date clearly visible. 3 days after she left, her hand stilled on the papers. Then she saw the handwritten note clipped to the back cover of the folder. She unclipped it. She read it. Her hands began to shake. She read the note aloud. Not for my benefit. I had written it. I knew every word. She read it the way people read things when the only way to survive them is to hear them in your own voice. I watched my mother take off her ring without crying. I promised myself I'd never make a woman feel she had to. I kept that promise. You just didn't notice. She looked up at me. Her eyes were full, but her face was trying to hold. "Where are you going?" she asked, because I was standing by the door with my coat on and my bag over my shoulder, the same bag that had carried the notebook for 11 weeks. "Georgia," I said. "I have bridges to build." I looked at her one last time, at the woman I had chosen every single day for 6 years, at the face I had memorized, at the life we had assembled together in this apartment that now held the ghost of all the versions of us we would never get to become. "You were never my property, Erica," I said. "You were my choice. Every single day. Until you made yours." I opened the door. I stepped out. I closed it behind me with the quietness of a man who has already finished grieving. Not because the pain was gone, but because I had made my peace with it in 14 pages of a gas station notebook, one careful entry at a time. The camera, if there were a camera, would not follow me down the hallway. It would stay in that apartment. It would find the refrigerator. It would hold on the door, and then slowly pull it open to reveal the Tupperware container on the middle shelf, sea base, cold and untouched, with her name written in my handwriting and the date beneath it. The night I sat alone at a table set for 2, and loved her enough to bring her food home even after she told me she was not mine. I never threw it away. That is the kind of man I am. That is the kind of man she lost. And that is the kind of man I was walking back toward. One step, one bridge, one careful decision at a time.